Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Thing Take from the round of rapid fire comic book reviews, and we've got three books today. This week was more about catch up and deciding which books were actually still worth reading. We're at that sort of 3 to 4th issue mark, which really helps me determine whether or not I want to keep reading a book. And because it was good, and because these books come out monthly, we're probably going to just, add them to the list of books we go over till we're caught up. So our first book is a new one by Tom Taylor. Well, new in the sense that came out late last year. Dark Knights of Steel by Tom Taylor. This is the DC universe set in a fantasy world. That's sort of it. That's sort of all there is to it. It's sort of vague, unspecific medieval times, and there's fantastical things there. And by fantastical, I mean DC characters are there. So by default, nothing quite makes sense. When I first heard this, I thought, well, this might be something along the lines of Marvel 1602, which is a really great book by Neil Gaiman. I don't think it gets enough talking. That most people just talk about is Sandman or whatever happened to the Cape Crusader, but Marvel 1602, I don't think gets enough attention. Like we should it's one of those really good books for me. But anyway, the premise here starts off with Krypton. Krypton about to go boom, as it tends to do in every story. And this time, Jor-El and Lara, they escape on the pod together. And just as they crash land, it's time. Young Kal-El is born, and they realize, hey, on this planet, we've got superpowers. So yeah. Then we skip to 19 years in the future. We see Batman, or Bruce in this case, and not Batman yet, is going off to investigate a magical sighting because there's been reports from King Jefferson's realm, Black Lightning's realm, that he has sent an assassin, a magical assassin, someone with magical powers, to kill the king, King Jor-El. And so he goes there. Kal-El wants to go with like, hey, I'm invulnerable, axes break off my body, you're a squishy human thing, I should go. Bruce's like, no, this is my job as someone who serves the royal family of El. And they go in, and it's actually one of the coolest scenes in the book, is just seeing Bruce and Alfred go to this town, and the Robins, Duke and Thomas, they're like, hey, we found them, they're at this inn, and what has happened is Stephanie Brown and Jason, they've, gotten everyone to leave. Jason was Jason, and then Bruce goes down there, it's the Banshee, it's Donna, it's Black Canary, and she gives the scream. And surprisingly, even though the room destroys everything, reduces the wood to splinters, Bruce is relatively fine. I know his ears are bleeding, he's a little shaken up, but physically he's fine. She goes to scream again. Kal-El comes in and like, hey, let's not do that. And Bruce knocks her out, and it's a weird thing going on. And then the question goes in, Bruce is chewed out by King Jor-El for like, hey, why'd you drag my son into this? Bruce, being the dutiful knight he is, says, look, that was not my problem. That was not my intention. There was an error on my part. Kal-El goes, don't lie for me, Bruce. I went because I should be the one to go. I am nigh invulnerable. Let's go. But as Bruce points out, magic does affect him. These creatures can affect him. And as just a servant of the House of El, he kneels and begs, or, apologizes. But then it turns out that, hey, Bruce is actually the son, he's the son of Thomas and Martha Wayne, who were the actual kings. So I'm like, so we were just alright with this usurpation of power? Now, granted, this is issue 1. In real time, we're on issue 4. So a lot of stuff has come out, but we're going to look at this story in the context it's presented in. And this was actually this first issue actually made me want to consider not reading the book. It was like, nah, we're going down a weird path. And this is the weird path it goes down. So after Jor-El calms everything down and says, hey, Bruce, walk with me, we then cut to a scene where the guy that's clearly supposed to be Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, is talking to a dude with a green ring. He's like, look, okay, so here's what's going to happen here. All right, so you take the shot. All right, you take the shot, and I'll make sure the arrow does what it's supposed to do. He gives a little spark of green, and all you gotta do is not miss. Like, you don't know, you must not know about me, all right? And then we cut to the castle, where Jor-El is telling Bruce, like, hey, look, I get it. And then Bruce mentions that, hey, I should have died in that mission. I think there's dark magic in me. I should probably exile myself. And it turns out this is one of the reasons Bruce is the way he is because, well, the night his parents died, because it's never safe to be Thomas and Martha Wayne, is what caused the accident is believed to be magic. Like, there was no explanation, it had to have been magic. This explains why Bruce hates magic so much. It killed his parents. And Jor-El reveals, well, I have to tell you something to explain that. See, you people think you're a bastard. You're not a bastard. Thomas couldn't have children, and you were a mistake. Martha and I'm like, oh, Lord, Tom Taylor couldn't help himself. Ever since Nightwing, it revealed that, and he tried to make it seem like he was all right. That night turns out Dick Grayson's dad had an affair with Tony Zuko's girlfriend, I guess, and now Dick has a half sister. But anyway, I think that was just because Tom Taylor wanted to use a girl that Dick Grayson couldn't sleep with. So anyway, this reveals, like, Jor-El then goes, like, you should be the king. Like, you should be the king after me, because yeah, you were loved by two kings. You're the rightful heir, no matter how you look at it. And before anything can go further, he's shot in the head by a green arrow, and that's where the comic ends. So I like the setting. My issue is this reveal about Bruce, to me, attempts to push Bruce in the front of the story, and I don't think this should have been. When I said I liked Marvel 1602, it's very hard to place who directly is the main character in Marvel 1602. The main character is the Marvel Universe, and what I'm hoping for here is the DC Universe is the main character. It's called Dark Knights of Steel. Bruce Wayne's on the cover. It does sort of send the idea, and DC's sort of been guilty of this for a while now, that they like to overplay Batman. He's had at least 15 books in the past couple months. More than any other DC character. And it kind of makes Batman stories less special. But anyway, with issue 4, I'm in a good place, which is weird because issue 4 was very much a Bruce story, but issue 3 also eased my concerns. This is a fun issue. This is a fun story. I look forward to reading the rest of it, and I look forward to telling you more about it. So next we have another story. This story is actually finished. This is The Death of Doctor Strange. I'm sorry, let me say it right. The Death of Doctor Strange by Jed MacKay. And this is a weird book for Marvel to put out, because I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Doctor Strange has a movie coming out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I don't know who thought it was a good idea to replace Stephen Strange as the Sorcerer Supreme as his movie's coming out. They did it with Tony Stark as Iron Man, and, Riri Williams became something Iron. Jane Foster then, Amadeus Cho. It is very weird for Marvel to make these decisions, and I've yet to see it reflected that the movies actually do help the comics out anyway, so maybe that's why they're doing it, because it doesn't matter. But wouldn't it help more if there were at least books that reflected the current status quo of the movies? I mean, it could only help. Look at Superman 78, or sometimes Batman 89. Those are books that take place in those cinematic universes, or just cinematics. But anyway, the first issue of this was really great. It set up just how important Doctor Strange is as a character to the Marvel Universe. Like, as Sorcerer Supreme, he maintains a barrier that protects from most interdimensional threats. Stuff like War of the Realms, like that was outside the purview, but every day the Earth is kept safe because of that barrier from a multitude of other threats. And he mentions that when the time comes, there should be a new Sorcerer Supreme, that duty will fall to them. They'll have access to that power as well. I'm like, okay. And Stephen is in a good place right now. He's got his magic back because he lost his magic for like the third time. And actually, ever since, like, what was it? Marvel Now? No, All New, All Different Marvel. Ever since All New, All Different Marvel, there's been like a random story where he loses magic. It's weird. He's got his hands back in working condition, so he can perform surgery. He can be a doctor again. He's got a handle on things. His magical academy is doing good, where he's teaching young people how to use magic. And he's in a good place. And like everyone in a good place, you gotta die. So one night, he's all cozied up for the day. He's walked his dog, stopped some dimensional threats, looked at a picture of his ex-wife who he's still in love with. And, he goes to get the door, and he's killed. And all of his strangest closest friends are aware of it. Zelma Sackott and a brother Voodoo, Wong, his ghost dog. Yeah, Strange has a ghost dog because he's adorable. And they all get there. Even Baron Mordu's like, who killed Strange? Who killed the guy I want to kill? And Wong thinks it was him. Like, no, dude. No, trust me. If I killed him, I'd be telling you to your face I killed him. All right, I wouldn't hide it. And so everyone's freaking out because the interdimensional barrier has been down, and all these dimensional threats are coming in. Some have already occupied Arizona. Some have occupied places, other places, and like governments are threatening to nuke these places. And it's all interrupted by the most Doctor Who thing ever. It's straight out of The Impossible Astronaut. Doctor Strange shows up and says, "Hey, I'm here to help." And it turns out this Doctor Strange is from Strange's past. Like, so at one point, Strange took a week of his life, just took it out, and put it somewhere else. So a piece of his soul was put on standby in the event this happened. So essentially, when Strange would ever die, this part of him would come out and basically get his affairs in order. Possibly pick the next Sorcerer Supreme, figure out what killed him. If there was a middle of like a fight or a mission, this Strange would finish off that fight. So I'm like, okay, that's actually really cool, really responsible. I like it. Bit shady. He technically did a better job than Voldemort, to be fair. Because no one knew about this, and it wasn't put in inanimate objects. So anyway, this story is, after this, the story sort of falls apart. And it doesn't fall apart that it becomes bad. It's just because that first story really sort of summed up, or explained to you who Strange was and how important he was. I don't think the story does a good job after that first issue to tell you that. Instead, we see Strange as very distant, and no one seems to really make that connection. Even Clea, who was Strange's ex-wife, who this Strange has not met yet. They have a sort of a weird rapport, but that's the only weird rapport he has. There's no real moment where anyone else talks about, hey, Strange was like my friend, he was a mentor. Baron Mordo is the one who has the closest thing to that other than Clea. And yeah, it's a bit distracting. Now, the whole thing is still solved and resolved, and at the end of it, Strange is still dead. Like, spoiler alert, he's still dead. The reason I have to say this is because there's a new Sorcerer Supreme coming, which is why I find this really weird. Why would you put a new Sorcerer Supreme in when, again, Strange's movie's coming out? It's his ex-wife, by the way. It was a really very tender, beautiful last page. Loved it. Really great. And I don't dislike this story, but I just sort of felt like, first of all, the reveal that she would be the new Sorcerer Supreme happened before the issue came out, which is terrible. They did it with the Batman Catwoman story. Stop doing this. All right, just stop. Reveal it at the end, like, hey, yeah, it turns out we did that. You can reveal it the day after that issue comes out. Yeah, don't spoil it. Or at least build up the mystery of, like, hey, who will be the next Sorcerer Supreme? Which has happened before. I wish they did better when Loki was Sorcerer Supreme. That was depressing. How did you ruin Loki? That was money on the table, Marvel, and you lost it, especially with that art. Anyway, this was an alright story. I would have liked more character moments. Like, there are so many characters, but not enough character moments. Still an interesting story, decent enough, and I'm rooting for the new Sorcerer Supreme, whatever. And finally, we have Batman 118 by Joshua Williamson. So Joshua Williamson has sort of been an up and coming, well, not really new and up and coming time, but he's had some good hits since he started in DC Rebirth. I'm not sure that's when he started, but that's when I came to notice him. That's when I think he got the most attention with his Flash Rebirth, which was really good. I still haven't finished reading it, but the deluxe versions I got, which is what I like to get. Really great story. Barry is somehow worse than Batman when it comes to making promises, because Batman makes promises to himself that he fails. Barry promises people in his life that he later lets down. Sometimes the very next story he's in, which is gold to me. Anyway, so this story takes place after the events of Joker War and Fear State. So effectively, James Tynion has left the book. For better or worse, I think it might be for the better. But this issue is more like, hey, let's just bask in it all and just sort of set up our story. So it's the night after everything's gone to hell, after everything avoided going to more hell, and Gotham's in a decent enough place, and the only person who can't relax is, of course, Bruce, because he's Bruce. Okay, he is always on edge. He's always on patrol, no matter what's going on. It's what makes him a very effective hero, is because he doesn't wait for a call. He goes out and looking for the calls. And it's a standard day. There's like one or two guys causing trouble. They're dealt with. And the question Barbara, who is selling into her role as Oracle, seems to be finally now, is asking, what do you do after the source? Like, what are you doing now? And it's all interrupted, of course, by a billionaire party. And these are the dumbest billionaires ever. Actually, it's just stupid rich people things. And they decide to have a serial killer masquerade. So they all dress as as Gotham's worst criminals. There are Jokers, Penguins, Harleys, Riddlers, Two-Faces, Ra's al Ghul's there, lots of Catwomen, hello, and even Punchline, who garnered like some big social media following when she became Joker's new sidekick. She became the new Harley Quinn, although she's now just Punchline. She's like, no, Harley Quinn's yesteryear. I'm Punchline. And Bruce breaks it up. There was no one notorious there save Firefly, the arsonist. Everyone else seems to be a mercenary. And he deals with them. It has to be the most uncomfortable thing to see people glorify serial killers that you put away. Like, glorify these maniacs. Like, there was a great scene in Tom King's Batman when he went to a fast food restaurant. They had like this Batman themed restaurant. You want to jokerize the fries? And Bruce is like, jokerize the fries. You know that's how people die, right? But anyway, we get back to the actual story. I had a little tangent there. And Barbara asks, what do you normally do after these whole we've saved the city moments? And he recalls actually where it gets depressing. He would, hang out with Gordon. Gordon's MIA. He was removed as commissioner. He's actually going off to kill the Joker, like someone asked him to do it. Weird, whatever. He'd, hang out with Robin. Robin's gone. He and Damon had like a falling out. It's weird. He would hang out with Superman. Superman's left the planet to go fight World, and he would make out with Catwoman. Catwoman's I don't even know where anymore. I fell behind on her book. I did. Or he would play chess with Alfred. Alfred's still dead. Hashtag bring back Alfred. Hashtag crisis event now. Have the ghost of Alfred be the key to the crisis event. Whatever. So Barbara asks, hey, why don't you come join me and Dick for breakfast? Like, he always gets too much food. And maybe Bruce would have said yes. Maybe he would have. But then he sees a blimp that says Batman Incorporated arrested for murder. And he's like, I gotta go look into this. I gotta go. So he goes to Botnesia. I probably butchered that, where they were arrested. And he meets the detective there. Who was currently investigating the murder scene. And he wants to know, like, hey, so who was this guy that Batman Incorporated killed? Turns out he was like this kidnapper, like terrorist named Abyss. Like, he'd been terrorizing the place for years. For the last year. He's been terrorizing the place for the last year. And he kidnapped at least 20 people. The Batman Incorporated came in, and then when he was... then they turned themselves in after he was murdered, after he was killed, and the detective, so you're here to prove they were friends. Like, no, I'm looking at this. They definitely killed him, but I'm trying to figure out why. Because Batman Incorporated, before they were this international team of Batman, they were the club of heroes, and they were set up for this in mind, to help out on an international level when Batman couldn't. So the question is, why would they become this? So the question is, well, who's paying them now? And Batman's like, well, Bruce Wayne isn't doing it because he's currently, like, broke. And it turns out, she's like, oh, Bruce Wayne isn't paying it. It's this guy, Lex Luthor. And I'm like,
what kind of shit is that?
Really, Lex. So hear me out. New 52, you blackmailed your way onto the Justice League. Then, in DC Rebirth, you declared yourself the Superman of Metropolis. And now you want to be Batman. Actually, hold on. Before that, you then decided to sell your soul to the Dark God Perpetua to become a human Martian hybrid thing. And then it turned out you were the biggest joke at the end of that. And now you've decided it's time to be Batman. When Victor Von Doom decided to become Iron Man, this at least made more sense. It made more sense. Lex, what are you doing? Go back to just being the guy that really hates Superman. That's where you were. That was your thing. You were good at the thing. Now, what do you think, Michael?
Stop it. Get some help.
Exactly. Anyway, with that in mind, that was it. This was actually a really good issue. We're here on the fourth part of this. Still good. Johnson Williamson, I can't recall when he has let me down. His Justice League Incarnate is sort of alright. It's just sort of hard to sort of care what's going on. I want to see the end goal for this. I think he really is trying to build up to... He may be the one behind the Crisis event. Who knows? But anyway, with that in mind, let's bring this video to close here. If you are new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out some other videos, and I'll catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.